Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. So last class, we started to do our weekly question session. So whoever who submitted or responded back with their answers, I have replied them today morning to all of you all. So again, we will do the same thing on a weekly basis. If you have already shared your email address with me, you don't have to again do that. But if you have not, please drop an email to the email ID that I share in the chat. Okay, drop an email from using your email ID if you have not already done so only. The people who have already shared, I would be sharing this week's questions with them as well. Okay, so with that, let's start from where we left. So from last class, we were looking at money market and money market instruments. What is a money market? There is no specific definition, but we know money market is a financial market where you can issue and trade debt instruments which are carrying a maturity period of less than 1 year. What are the characteristics of such a market? It is a over-the-counter market. It's not a centralized market, so you could access it through electronic means and through, it's decentralized. There's no one specific location for you to do your transaction in. And another salient feature when it comes to money market is it is a wholesale market for short-term or short tenor instruments. There is high value denominations or high value transactions being carried out in this market. Okay. What are the specific features that you see in money market instruments? The key feature is the short-term nature of it. They are all with a maturity period of less than 1 year. You should remember that whenever you hear the word money market, two things should pop into your mind. They're talking about a debt security and they're talking about a security which is a short term, less than a year. Okay, both those should pop into your head. Okay, that's one of the salient features. Next is due to its short term nature, they are of low risk, they are of high liquidity. Because of high liquidity, the instrument is considered as very close to money. Another reason why this market is called is money market. And another very important feature is some of the money market instruments are priced using discount pricing. There is a face value, but at issuance, it is issued at a lesser value than its face value. The difference between issue price and the face value is called discount. Okay. Purposes or role of having a money market. Now, understand when I say purpose or role of money market, what I'm trying to address it to you is, can there be a financial market without a market for short-term instruments? Can a market function without any short-term and all the instruments are of long-term? Can there be a financial market like that? Okay, so think of that worst case scenario and see why money market. Why do we need to have a short-term market? The major or significant reason is to discharge or to transmit the monetary policy effect. Central bank, for it to transmit the monetary policy and execute it efficiently, they first influence the economic variables which operate in the short-term market. They know when the short-term market is influenced, it ultimately causes a ripple effect on the long-term market. Another aspect is signaling. Whatever happens in the short-term market gives us a signal to what could happen in the future. Now, currently we know in the short term, there is a slight pressure to the interest rate where there could be an interest rate hike in the future. So, for the long-term market, what is our expectation? We could expect the rates to pick up when it comes to long-term securities in the future. Okay, so short-term gives us that signaling effect to what could happen in the long-term market. Fundraising, remember the word fundraising, it's not capital raising. Why? Here, it's for your short-term requirement, you need money, you need funds. For that, you enter into money market. If you need capital to be infused, then what market should you be in? Capital market. Similarly, banks also enter into money market. Why? They would have certain or sudden mismatches in their liquidity position, sudden maturity mismatches that they need to breach, certain SRR breaches that they need to quickly mitigate for. For those requirements, they could tap into the money market, more specifically the interbank call market, to resolve these issues. For short-term investment, we saw why an investor would want to go into something like a money market. We know rational investor wants high profits. Okay, they want high return. But when we spoke about the characteristics of the money market instruments, we saw low risk and relatively low return as well. So given the low return, why do investors still move into money market? Because here their objective is not to earn high profits. Their objective is to reduce the opportunity cost of holding cash. Idling money means no interest at all. Rather than that, you could have or park your money in a short-term investment that you could use when a sudden requirement arises. Okay, and also for risk mitigation. For you to manage your portfolio risk, it's good to have certain part of a certain portion of your portfolio in a short tenor without having all your eggs in the long-term market. In case of a certain lucrative opportunity coming in for a new investment or a certain need for which you need money, if you have money in your short-term investments, you could quickly cash them due to its high liquidity nature and capitalize on that new opportunity that you receive, or meet that urgent working capital or urgent need that comes to you. Okay, so these are why, or the purposes why you need to have a money market. Then we saw who are the participants in money market. For what intention are they getting in? As a borrower, why do they come in? So on a borrower point of view, we saw very much in detail. But from a lender point of view, from an investor point of view, we saw their motive is to park their excess funds for a short time and get some additional return. In other words, reduce the opportunity cost of holding excess cash. But think about individual investors like you and me. For us to enter into money market on a standalone, on an individual basis, myself as just me entering single-handedly as an individual person into the money market, I would need to have a large quantum of money. Even for me to buy a treasury bill, minimum of 5 million rupees. Okay, so how could an individual who has, let's say, only 200,000, only 100,000, only 10,000 want to capitalize or make use of this market? For them to access this market, they have something called money market funds, where entities, companies pool money from several investors and use that fund to invest in money market instruments. We saw examples as well. Just for you to get some clarity, I'll explain again on how money market funds work. Let's say there are 5 of us, and all 5 on an individual basis, maximum amount of money we have, let's say, is 10,000 rupees. Okay, so 5 of us over here, 10,000 each, 50,000. Okay, just from the 5 of us, we will go and deposit in a company who has all their due licenses. Okay, when we talk about stock exchange, you will know how the funds are regulated in Sri Lanka. Okay, So this entity is licensed to operate this fund. So we deposit the money for that particular company. Let's say, for example, we take NDB Wealth Fund. Okay, so we deposit our money there. Just like that, there'll be 10,000 more people who put their money. Let's say they also have 10,000 each. When all this money get pooled up, obviously that company will have millions, okay, in their fund. Now they can use that cash and invest in money market instruments such as treasury bill, commercial papers, repos, like it could be reverse repos, certificate of deposits, and so forth, and earn a return for its investors. Okay. What are the money market instruments? We are going to discuss 7 money market instruments, and we completed discussing about treasury bills. Before moving into the detailed instrument, we saw that these 7 could be divided based on the pricing technique that they follow. There is one set of instruments who go on a add-on interest rate basis, something like fixed deposit. You have a principal amount, there is a given interest rate, you calculate your interest by multiplying the interest rate into the principal. Another set of instruments follow discount pricing technique, where you have a face value, but you issue this instrument at a price less than its face value. Okay, so the difference would be is called discount. That is essentially your interest income. All right. Treasury bills, one of the main money market instruments, one of the largest money market instruments that you could see in Sri Lanka, very prominent. What are the tenors in Sri Lanka that you could see for treasury bills? 91 days, 182 and 364. What is the objective? For you to raise short-term funds. To whom are we raising it for? To the government to finance their short-term needs, budget deficits and so forth, or to repay a maturing treasury security. Okay, and remember, if the treasury bill is issued in its own currency, it is considered, or in its own national denomination, it is considered as the safest security or safest instrument. Why? Because the sovereignty or the government itself has the right to print cash. Therefore, we consider default or credit risk to be nil. Why? Even at a worst case scenario, they could print money and settle the outstanding. But if the treasury bill is denominated in a foreign currency, we cannot say that, because does the local or does our government have the authority to print foreign currency? No. Therefore, they would have to meet the payment by their own reserves, by excess forex that they have, or from another borrowing that they have, or from refinancing. Okay. So if they can't do any of this, then of course, there is a possibility of a default situation. Okay. If you did the weekly MCQs that I shared, there was a question which said, which of the following risks are not applicable when it comes to government securities? Most of them had answered it right, but there were a couple of students who said all of the above. Remember, treasury bills or government security in their own local denomination, only risk that they don't have is credit or default risk. They are exposed to liquidity risk, they are exposed to market risk, maturity risk, all of them, but the level of risk is lesser, very much lesser than other instruments. But yes, they are exposed to such risk. It's only credit risk that we say no, they are not exposed to credit risk. Why? The issuer has the ability to repay. All right. So there were some students who chose all of the above. It's for them I'm explaining. Credit risk is the answer for that particular MCQ. Liquidity or any other type of risks are risks that are exposed, borne by treasury bills, but the level of risk is relatively less. Okay, I hope that's clear for you all. Treasury bill market is one money market instrument which has both primary and secondary market. Who are operating in the primary market? It is the issuer, though government is the ultimate user of the fund. Who is issuing treasury bills and bonds? Central bank on behalf of the government. So here in the primary market, you could see central bank getting involved and primary dealers who purchase on behalf of the investors. Investors don't get directly involved in the primary market. In the secondary market, who are the parties involved? It is between primary dealer and investor that the transaction move on. Okay, treasury bill, because it is one of the largest money market or money market sub instrument or sub market. These are one of the highest or most active and most liquid markets in Sri Lanka. Okay, and then again we saw the two terms, off-run issues and on-the-run issues. On-the-run issues are treasury bills that are issued in the very recent auction. If I'm talking today, what would be the on-the-run issue? The issue that happened on the 4th August, on Wednesday. We know auction happens every Wednesday, settlement happens every Friday. Okay, so the 4th August issuance would be like the on-the-run issue. But whatever, all the issuance that happened before that are considered off-the-run issues. Then we move on to calculations. We saw because they follow a discount pricing. How do we find the discount in amount? Face value minus the issue price, you get discount in terms of amount. But just by looking at the amount, can you compare? Let's say I have a treasury bill which has a tenure of 3 months. You have a treasury bill which has a tenure of 6 months. Both has a face value of, let's say, 10,000. Both are issued at 9,000. Okay, what is the discount in amount terms? I will also get 1,000. You will also get 1,000. By just looking at the amount, now can we compare and say, yeah, same return, no? Both of us are getting 1,000 rupees. What's the difference? But remember, there is a time difference. I can earn 1,000 in 3 months. It takes 6 months for you to earn that 1,000. Okay, so we need to denominate or depict that return in terms of a percentage where you can annualize it. So it's easy for you to compare. Easy for me to compare my T-bill return with your T-bill return, or to compare my T-bill return with any other instrument. Okay, therefore we move to 3 particular ways of calculating your return. Discount. Discount rate is calculated based on the face value. I explained it to you why that is. So discount divided by face value multiplied by 360 divided by days to maturity. Why are we doing this? We are doing this to annualize it. Yes, I earn 1,000 for 3 months. Then if it's for 1 year, how do you depict this 1,000? If I hold this instrument on a revolving basis for 1 year, what is my discount rate? So I need to annualize it. Okay, this is the annualization factor. And another point to note is we use 360 when calculating the discount rate. Next, we had holding period yield. What do you mean by holding period yield? No, I need to know the percentage of return. Okay, I need to know, what do I need to know? Percentage of my return for the period that I'm holding. I don't need to know it for the year. I need to know for the 3 months I'm holding, what is my return percentage. Now, if we are talking about return, focus on the words return. I need to match my return with my investment. The income or the gain should be matched with my investment. If I put 1 rupee, what am I getting in return? If I invest 1 rupee in my treasury bill, what am I getting in return? So when you're calculating your return percentages, it has to be as a basis of purchasing price or issue price. Purchase price or issue price. That's why for discount we use face value. Holding period yield or annual return, we take the purchase or the issue price. Okay. Now, do we have to annualize this formula? No need. Why? It is holding period yield. For the period you're holding the instrument, you're calculating your return. So you don't need to annualize it and see it for a year. But this has its shortcoming. You cannot freely compare your return with other instruments. Therefore, there was a requirement to calculate the annual yield or investor return percentage. There again, basis is purchase price. But now you are going to annualize that. You are going to annualize it. And how are you going to annualize? You're going to use 300. Whenever we are talking about yield, it is calculated for 365 days. Okay. But here, because our focus is treasury bill, what is the maximum tenor for a treasury bill? We go for 364. Therefore, just for treasury bills, we use the day count here as 364. Okay. Then we moved on how to find the price of a treasury bill. Merely on a backward calculation technique, depending on the information you have. We discussed the rationale behind this formula in detail as well. Then I told you to attempt the 3 questions in our slide. I hope you have. Let's start from that point. Suppose you have a 360-day treasury bill at a price of 95 and the face value is 100. Okay. Calculate the discount rate. Now, for you to calculate the discount rate, first you need to know the discount amount. How do you calculate the discount amount? Face value minus the issue price or purchase price. 100 minus 95. You have 5 rupees as your discount in terms of amount. Okay. And then how do you calculate your discount rate in percentage? 5 rupee divided by, is it going to be 95 or 100? 100. Why? Your discount percentage depends on the face value. Okay. I use the water bottle as an example to tell you, if the bottle is 30 rupees and there's a 10% discount, it is from the face value that you give the discount. Hence, the basis is face value. Okay. So here you use 100 as your basis. Multiplied by 360, that is already given, divided by the days left to maturity. Here, how many days are left until it matures? 360 days. Okay. So divided by 360, you directly get 5% as your discount rate. Okay. Now you have to calculate your holding period yield. For the period that you are holding, what is your return? You have invested or you have bought this treasury bill at 95 rupees. by investing 95 rupees, at the end of 360 days, you get 5 rupees in return. So your return is the discount amount, which is rupees 5, divided by your investment amount, 95 rupees, or the purchase price, multiplied by 100. There is no any day count to annualize it. So your holding period yield will be 5.26. Now you need to know the annual yield or the annual return from this security. So what is your return? 5 rupees, which is your discount. What is your investment? 95 rupees. Now you multiply this, or you annualize this. Because we are talking about yield, annual yield, we are going to take 365. Here, because it's a treasury bill, it's going to be 364 days. How many days left to maturity? 360 days left for maturity. So your annual yield or annual return from the security is 5.32. Okay. Let's go to the second question. You have a 182-day treasury bill at a price of 95 and a face value of 100. Now you calculate your discount rate. Before you calculate the discount rate, you need to know your discount in amount. What is your face value? 100. What is the purchase price? 95. What is the discount in amount? Rupees 5. You can see, irrespective of the tenor, discount in amount is just a mere subtraction. Rupees 5. So can you easily compare it just by knowing the discount in amount? No. You have to combine it with the period. In question 1, it took 360 days for you to earn 5 rupees. Here, in just 6 months, you can earn that 5 rupees. So, before you do any calculation, you should know that question number 2 yield is going to be higher. I'm telling you certain techniques before you do calculations that you could check on. Why? Question number 1, to earn 5 rupees, you need to wait for nearly 1 year. Question number 2, only 6 months and you get the same return. So ideally, what is going to be more beneficial for you? The treasury bill that you are going to talk in question number 2. Within 6 months, you get your 5 rupees. So before you do any calculations, you should know in question number 2, the yield and the discount rates are going to be higher. Okay, let's check whether that's happening. So discount in terms of or as a percentage, 5 rupee divided by 100. This is of no change. Here also it's the same. But in the day count, you multiply it by 360, but how many days are left for maturity? 182 days. Therefore, your discount rate is now close to 10%. You have a higher discount than the bill that we spoke in question number 2. Then calculate the holding period yield. Holding period yield meaning your discount as a percentage of your investment. You invest 95 and you get 5 rupees. So what is your holding period yield? 5.26. 5 divided by 95. Are we matching it with the tenor? No. It's just for the period you're holding. What's your return? Something very similar to discount in amount. You can see this 5.26 is the same 5.26 here. That shows you that holding period yield is not giving you a clear indication. It's not enough. Why? That's not relating it to the time period it takes to earn that money. Therefore, we need to calculate the yield of a security. what is the return that you get on an annualized basis. So 5 divided by 95 into 364 divided by days to maturity. How many days are left in question number 2? 182 days. Therefore, your annual yield will be 10.53. So look here, discount rate is higher, annual yield is higher when the discount in amount remains the same, but here the period is different. Longer the period, that's going to be disadvantageous for you. Shorter the tenor, more beneficial or quick yield for you. You quickly realize your return. Why? You can quickly get your money back and reinvest as well. Okay. Question number 3. Find the purchase price of a 91-day treasury bill with a face value of 100, which has a discount rate of 2.97, holding period yield of 0.75, annual yield of 3.04, using the 3 methods discussed. Okay. Now, whenever you have any questions relating to an instrument, let it be debenture, bonds, when we move along, we need to calculate the return percentages. Or their price, anything. When you have such a calculation, what you need to do is, you need to first jot down the pieces of information that the question is giving you. That's one technique that even I followed during my exams. Why? Because when you do that, you have all the necessary information precisely written. You don't have to go again and again read the question to get all the information. So when you read this, when they say 91-day treasury bill, it's clear days to maturity is 91. Face value 100. Discount rate is this much. Holding period yield, annual yield. All these are jotted down, precisely given. And when you write it separately, it's very clear for you. And you can easily find a method to calculate. Now, if you have the prior, if you remember the understanding or explanation I gave you for the 3 formulas, using that, when you calculate, you will arrive at a price of 99.25. Even as an approximate, using all 3 techniques. Okay. So when you, even if you find use any of the techniques, answer should be the same to you. All right. Before we wind up for the treasury bill part of it, I want you to see another point. This is a graph that I plot across to show you the relationship between price, discount rate, holding period yield, and the annual yield. Okay. Can you see now? I want you to write this on your slide on the printouts that I've shared as a note. Why? Because it's important when it comes to MCQs even. These are certain norms that you see when it comes to treasury bills. Okay. Can you see discount rate, which is denoted in red, annual yield, which is denoted in blue? What is higher? annual yield is higher than the discount rate. Always. Why? What is the reason for annual yield to be higher than discount rate? Because annual yield is calculated based on the purchase price. Purchase price is lesser than the face value due to the discount, whereas discount rate is calculated using the face value. Hence, the annual yield percentage is always higher than the discount rate. Can you see here? Annual yield is always higher than the discount rate. Why? Here, for annual yield, you divide it by 95, but for discount rate, you divide it by 100. Okay, but note that this difference narrows down when the time period reduces to maturity, or when it becomes very close to maturity. The difference or the gap between these two rates narrow down. Okay. However, still the annual yield remains the highest, but the gap or the difference narrows down when the days to maturity reduces. Now, this was when it was issued as a brand new. But when the period keeps declining, when it's reaching its maturity point, you could see the difference being lesser and lesser. Okay. And another point I want you to understand is the relationship between price and annual yield. You could see that annual yield, let's remove these out. Black line represents the price, blue line represents the annual yield. Remember, we learned there is an inverse relationship between interest rate and price of an instrument, return rate or yield rate and the price of the instrument. You can see that inverse relationship even here. When the yield or return keeps declining, you can see price being increased. Price of that instrument is reaching a higher point. Why? You can see another point here. The tenor is reducing. When the tenor is reducing, the time left for you to earn additional return is reducing. Your additional return also thins or reduces. Therefore, your annual yield keeps declining close to maturity. It keeps moving down further. Why? The return amount left is going to be even less. Now, for example, let's say on issuance, I buy a treasury bill. 100 rupee is the face value, 95 rupees they have issued. Okay, let's say the treasury bill is a 3-month treasury bill. Okay, 3 months treasury bill, face value is 100. Let's say I bought it at 90 rupees. What is my discount amount? 10 rupees. If I wait for 3 months, I will get 10 rupees. Let's say at the end of 1 month, I need that money very urgently. So I sell my treasury bill in the secondary market. When I'm selling it in the secondary market, what happens? Am I going to give the entire 10 rupees to that person? Am I going to again sell at 90 rupees to that person? No. I was holding this instrument for 1 month. So I will sell it to another party at 93 rupees. Out of that 10 rupee discount, now I have realized 3 rupees. I give the other party 7. Let's say one of you. You buy it at 93. Now you have the ability to earn a discount of 7 rupees. Okay. But let's say after a month, even you need money. Now you are trying to sell in the secondary market to somebody else. Okay. Now when you are selling it, will you sell at 93 itself? No, you held it for 1 month. You will sell it maybe at 96. You have to get a gain. Okay, so when you sell at 96, you get another 3 rupee. Now 6 rupees are realized from that entire 10 rupee discount. Now only 4 rupees are left. So the person who's buying it newly will buy at 94, hold it for 1 month, one last month. Maturity happens at 100 rupees, which is the face value, and get the 4 rupee discount and move out. Hence, the return keeps reducing when maturity, days to maturity reduces. The days left for the instrument to mature, when that declines, the discount or the return keeps declining. Similarly, price keeps increasing. Why? On maturity, the price has to be 100. Let's say today I buy that, that same treasury bill is getting rotated, and today I buy, tomorrow is the maturity. I know tomorrow on maturity, I will only get 100. So today will I buy it at, let's say, 101? No, I will definitely buy it at a price less than 100. Okay, so the price keeps increasing when time decreases and it reaches close to the face value. Okay, note these finer points. Today we are going to talk about commercial papers, the second one of the very main instrument when it comes to money markets. Commercial papers. Now it's an instrument that not many students might be aware of. They might not be exposed to dealing with such instrument, but I'll try my best to explain it to you. Now understand, first let's see who are the parties who issue commercial papers. Now we know treasury bills are issued by the government. Who issues commercial papers? Any non-financial firms. Okay, any non-financial firms could issue commercial papers. Now there were no any recent articles for me to show you on commercial papers, but this was some time back, very old, 2012. You could see Abans issuing commercial papers. Non-financial firm issue commercial papers to raise short-term funds for their requirements. Okay. Now, this is a debt instrument. It's a borrowing. You have to return it back at the end of maturity. And they are a non-financial firm, a private entity, a company. Can you say they have no default risk or nil security, nil credit risk? You can't. Because do they have the ability to print rupees to settle? No. Therefore, they are exposed to, or that instrument is exposed to some level of credit or default risk. Okay. To mitigate that or to address that, you need to have a rating to be given to that instrument. The credit rating agency will study about the issuer and give a credit rating for the issuer and for that issuing commercial papers, so that it gives some sort of confidence to the market. Now here, let's say you don't see any of this. You just see Abans issuing 250 million commercial papers. Okay. You might not be aware what that company is doing, nothing. Okay. Will you be confident enough to give, let's say, all your life savings into these commercial papers? You will be a bit worried. I don't know what this company is. I don't know whether that company can repay me. How do I guarantee that? Or how do I know that? Is there any indication on how strong this company could be? That's why rating agencies always issue a rating for debt instruments. They give a rating such as A, B, C. There are certain variations, AA, AAA, A plus, A minus. Okay. Those ratings will tell you the strength of this company as a issuer. Do they have the ability to repay? Do they have that strength? Or is it a very speculative or a junk bond where you're not sure, you're gambling with your money? You're not sure whether you will get your investment back. Okay, so a rating is always attached to the issuer and to the issuance to show the level of credit risk involved. Okay. I'm trying to show you some examples. They only have debentures. Mhm. During the recent times, it was very rare for you to see good commercial papers coming in. Why? Already the short-term rates are low. So on that scale, they could rather easily borrow from banks rather than going into commercial papers. See, I think you can see here. So this particular company, First Capital Holdings PLC, they have a issuer rating. The company has a rating, and for the instrument commercial papers that they have released, there is a separate rating as well. To highlight the ability of that particular company to repay. Okay. Now, what is the usual or one of the salient characteristics of commercial papers? Mostly issued by non-financial firms. Mostly issued by non-financial firms. You could have companies like Singer, Abans, who issue this instrument to raise short-term money. And another important feature is it is unsecured. Now remember, treasury bills was being issued by the government. No or nil credit risk or default risk. Here, non-financial firm. It's a company that is issuing. Therefore, there is some level of credit risk involved. Is there any security being given? No, nothing. It's unsecured. You don't have any kind of security offered. Sometimes for debentures, there are secured debentures where they mortgage a certain level of property or certain asset against that debenture when they offer. But commercial papers, no. By nature, they are unsecured short-term instruments. Okay. The usual tenor of commercial papers is between 3 to 9 months. Okay, that's the usual gap. Very rarely you would see a 1-year commercial papers. There are instances that you see it, but most of the commercial papers carry a tenor of between 3 months to 9 months. Okay. Remember, they are offered by large, well-known companies. The unknown companies can't easily come and issue commercial papers. And the companies also carry good credit ratings. Okay. Only then people have the confidence to invest in commercial papers. Now you'll be wondering, why do these, now these are companies, right? These companies could easily borrow from a bank. Why are they issuing commercial papers? Two reasons, or you would say three reasons. One is the company can get their money, get the borrowing without giving any security. Just by their own strength, own brand name, they can get the money. Unsecured nature. Other one is the level of documentation involved. It's easy or quick turnaround time when they are already, they have experience in issuing commercial papers rather than borrowing from a bank. Thirdly, the interest rate. There are instances where strong companies are able to borrow their short-term money at a much lower rate than what they could get from banks. Okay, banks have their limits, banks have their cost of funding to consider about. Okay, but there are instances where the firm or a company is able to source funding or source money through commercial papers, highlighting their strength at a rate of even lesser than what the bank is offering. Okay, due to these reasons, there are companies who prefer to issue commercial papers than going for bank borrowings. Okay, main reason why they offer commercial papers is, one, to meet your short-term debt requirement. You might have something to do in the next 6 months or 3 months. Just to bridge that time gap, you would go for a commercial paper. Or what you could go is, if you had already issued a commercial paper and now you have to repay, you could issue a new commercial paper, source that money and repay the maturing one. Essentially, rolling over the previously issued commercial paper. Okay, let's say I issued a 3-month commercial paper 3 months ago and that is maturing, let's say on Monday. I could issue a new commercial paper last week, source the money and invest that money or use that money to retire the maturing commercial paper. Okay, why do companies do that? Now these are companies. Even Treasury bill, we saw instances that they did that. Why do companies do that? They are borrowing using their strength, right? Using the balance sheet strength, using the brand image, everything. Now, by rolling over, what they can do is they can benefit from the short-term rate for a very long period. Now, we know usually short-term rates are lower than compared to long-term rates. That's the usual one. Okay. Now, let's say I'm issuing a commercial paper for 3 months. That is maturing. Then again, I'm issuing a commercial paper for another 3 months using that money to repay. Let's say like this, I'm trying to revolve. I'm trying to drag the commercial paper. Now, because you're focusing only on 3-month intervals, you are able to borrow the money at a lesser rate. Let's say you're going to issue a debenture for 5 years. You definitely have to offer a higher rate. Let's take the current example. Currently, market is going at a rate of 5 to 6%. Okay. So if I'm coming to issue a commercial paper, it has to be at the range of that. Let's say now I'm coming to issue a debenture. I would have to issue it at 9%, 10% or so forth. But let's say that 5% commercial paper just for 3 months, I keep revolving, I keep issuing each time. I'm able to benefit from that low interest rate and drag it to a very longer period. Okay. Commercial papers do not have secondary market. Treasury bill, yes, there was, but commercial papers, no, sorry, they don't have a secondary market. Okay. How do you calculate the return for commercial papers? For you to calculate the return of commercial papers, you need to know how the commercial papers are priced. They are also priced using discount pricing technique. There is a face value. You issue at a price less than that, and then on maturity, you receive the face value. Okay. So due to the same pricing used as treasury bills, you can use the same formulas that we studied for treasury bills here. But one point to remember, when you're calculating annual yield for commercial paper, you can't use 364, you have to use 365. Okay. Questions on how to calculate for commercial papers. First question is asking you to calculate the price of the commercial paper. So you would use the same formulas that we showed or we discussed at treasury bill level. Let's see what are the information you have. Face value 10 million, tenor 30 days, discount rate is 4.75%. What is the price of this commercial paper? Okay, first you jot down the information that are given to you. Now, how are you going to calculate this? Even if you don't remember the formula, we know face value minus discount will get you price. Okay, so here face value is 10 million. You know the discount rate 4.75. First you reverse the annualization factor. So you multiply by the days to maturity divided by 360 and you will get, what do you get? Discount as a percentage of purchase price. Okay, discount as a percentage of purchase price. You take that particular answer, deduct it from 1. What do you mean by 1? Price over price. When you deduct that by 1, what do you get? Here you get discount divided by price. Okay, here you are trying to minus it by 1. Then you arrive at the issue price as a percentage. Issue price as a percentage of the face value. When you multiply it by the face value and face value will get nullified and you will arrive at the purchase price of 9.96 million. Let me show it to you clearly. Discount rate is 4.75. This, how do you calculate this? Using this particular formula. Okay, so answer here is what do you mean by 4.75? This answer is 4.75. Okay. So now I need to know this particular amount. Then I have to reverse this. Already multiplied and only I got 4.75. So I need to reverse it. So 4.75 I will have to multiply now by days to maturity divided by 360. So what do you mean by days to maturity? I have 30 days to maturity. So 30 divided by 360. Okay. 30 divided by 360. This will now give you discount as a percentage of face value. Okay. Now, after knowing this, discount as a percentage of face value, now 1 minus discount divided by face value. What do you mean by 1? Face value divided by face value. Then your answer will be purchase price, because face value minus discount is price divided by face value. This particular answer, when you simply multiply it by the face value of 10 million, that both face value will get nullified and you will arrive at a price of 9.96 million. Okay, a way for you to understand without knowing the formula. Question number 2. Investor has purchased a 30-day commercial paper with a face value of 1 million for a price of 990,000. What is the discount rate? Now that's very, very simple. What is the discount in terms of amount? 10,000. Okay, 10,000 divided by 990 or 1 million? 1 million. I'm talking about discount rate here. So it has to be face value multiplied by 360 divided by the days left for maturity, which is 30 days. You will get a discount rate of 12%. The price of a 182-day commercial paper is 4.925 million. If the discount rate is 2.97, what will the commercial paper pay at the day of maturity? Now, this is very, very important. Here, what are they asking? First, you need to know what they're asking. They're giving you the days to maturity, 182 days. They are telling you that the price of this instrument is 4,925,000, which means your job is now not to calculate the purchase price, already given. Discount rate is also given, 2.967%. They are asking what will the commercial paper pay at the end of maturity. So on maturity, what does the commercial paper pay? It pays or it matures at its face value. So the question is asking you to calculate the face value. So how do you do it? Simple. The matter of changing your initial formula. If you can remember one particular formula, it's just to alternate. There you can see, you divide your purchase price by discount multiplied by days to maturity 360. You have to reverse it. That particular amount, 1 minus that particular amount will give you purchase price as a percentage of face value. Okay, when you invert that, or when you divide purchase price by that particular ratio, you will arrive at your face value, which is 5 million. Okay, the face value of a 182-day commercial paper is 8 million. If the investor wants to earn a return of 4.09%, what is the price the investor will be willing to pay? They have given an annual return percentage here. They are asking you what is the price that the person would be willing to pay. So it's the third form. They have given you the time, the yield. Now you need to do the backward calculation and find the price of this instrument. Okay. Now, in case, let's say I adjust this question and type it here as what is the maximum price? Then use the same technique. Why they are asking you the maximum price that they are willing to pay? This is the interest rate, annual yield. If the yield increases by even a little bit of amount, price will fall. If it reduces, price will increase. So at this particular rate of return, this is the maximum price. Okay. Third instrument, repurchase agreements. Repurchase agreement. Now this is one of a very tricky instruments. Okay, we saw what a treasury bill is, we saw what is a commercial paper. Now repurchase agreement is somewhat related to treasury bills. Okay. Now look at the term repurchase agreement. There is an agreement where you say, I will buy it back. I will buy it back, which means you will buy it back in the future. So today what are you doing? Today you're selling an instrument with an agreement to purchase in the future. So that is repurchase agreement. Simply, that's what a repurchase agreement does. Today, I am selling this to you at a particular price and I take that money from you. In 3 months' time, I agree to buy this back from you and pay your money. That is repurchase agreement. Now, I need to sell something to you, right? In a repurchase agreement, one party agrees to sell something to you for a particular price. And I take that amount and give you the good or give you the security. 3 months down the line or in the future, the money I borrowed from you, I need to pay you back. And I can get my security back. Now I have 2 questions. One is, today, when I'm agreeing to repurchase in the future and selling it to you today, let's say I got 1,000 rupees. 3 months after, I come to buy that security from you. If I'm giving you the same 1,000, will you accept it? No. You would want 1,000 plus a certain return. Correct? That is one. Next point is, now I am giving you a security, right? Okay, you take this, give me the money. In the future, I will definitely buy that security from you by returning your money. Let's say I default. Let's say I run away in the 3 months. What could you do? You have my security. You have my instrument with you. You can obviously sell that in the market and get your money back. Okay. So, repurchase agreement. Repurchase agreement is an agreement where one party agrees to sell a security to another. Today, today I agree to sell it to you. With the agreement to repurchase that particular security from them at a future date, at a specified price in the future. I will tell you the price. In other words, I will tell you the interest rate. Let's say in 3 months, I will pay you a 2% interest rate and get this back. Okay. Repos are considered as collateralized products. What do you mean by collateralized product? Even though the borrower vanishes, the investor or the lender has a security that they can sell and get their money back. Okay, therefore repos are considered collateralized products. Now we didn't see that in treasury bills. We know commercial paper is unsecured, but repurchase agreements are collateralized agreements. Okay. Now let's say one of you, with one of you, I am entering into a repurchase agreement. Okay. There is another party is also entering into a repurchase agreement with one of you. Now let's say I have a bike. Okay. I'm giving you that bike as collateral and telling you, okay, 3 months down the line, I will buy that bike from you. Okay. And let's say I run away. Now what can you do? You have to sell the bike and get your money back. Let's say when you're trying to sell the bike, you can't sell the bike. There is no market. No one wants to buy that. Then you are exposed to another risk. What is that other risk? Your security risk. Even your collateral that's offered is not enough. It's not adequate. But let's say another party comes into a repurchase agreement with you, and that party tells you, okay, I have a commercial paper. You take this commercial paper. 3 months down the line, I will pay your money back and take that commercial paper. Obviously, yes, commercial paper has an amount of money involved, some kind of a stronger instrument than a real asset. But who are the issuers of commercial papers? Non-financial firms. What we know, they carry high rating, good, no risk, all the aspects. But what if there is a default situation? You can't say no default risk. No, there is some kind of a default risk, but it's low. What if it materializes? Then again, lender has no way to collect the money back. So most lenders in a repurchase agreement preferred government securities. They want a security which had no default risk. They know if the counterparty in the repo agreement defaults even, they know the collateral is very strong. Okay, that's how treasury bills came into the repurchase market or the repurchase agreement scenario. Most repo transactions are carried on by backing or using government securities as their collateral. Okay, so I would give my treasury bill to you, and then having that, you will give me money. 3 months down the line, I will return the money and take my treasury bill back. Okay. Now let's compare repurchase with commercial papers and T-bills. Treasury bills, no credit risk. Okay. Commercial papers, there is a level of credit risk. Why? Because they are unsecured. Repurchase agreement, you have a risk, true, but there is a security to nullify that. So the risk that you are exposed is not so high in compared to commercial papers. Commercial papers, it's unsecured. Therefore, there is a level of credit risk. It's a company that is issuing, something could happen and go wrong. But repurchase agreement, even though something goes wrong, you have a collateral, you have a protection that you could use that to sell off and get your money. So compared to a commercial paper, return in a repo agreement is less. Why is the return less? Because low risk. But if you compare repurchase agreement with a treasury bill, with a treasury bill market or with a treasury bill as a security, Obviously, the return in a repurchase agreement has to be higher than what a treasury bill offers. Why? T-bill, zero credit risk. Here, there is somewhat of a credit risk, but relatively mitigated due to collateral being given. Okay. Repurchase agreement do not have a secondary marker. There is no any secondary marker. Let me show you how a repo works. There are two timelines. This happens today. Today, let's say myself, I give government security as collateral to one of you, the lenders. And then you give me back money as cash funds. In a later date, this is future. In the future or at the end of the repo term, lender will give me back my security and I will now repay the initially borrowed cash funds and the interest. Okay. Now tell me, who is agreeing to repurchase? The borrower. It is the borrower. It is the borrowing party who agrees to buy it back. What about the lender? What is their agreement? They would agree to sell it back. Okay, I will buy it today, but in the future, I agree to sell it to you. I won't sell it to anybody else. I sell it to you. Okay, so that kind of a agreement comes from the lender. Repo is a combination of two transactions. First, you have a security dealer, such as a bank, who sells the security it owns to an investor, agreeing to repurchase them at a specified higher price at a future date. Second transaction, days or months later, the repo is unwound or reversed as the dealer buys back the security from the investor. Okay, that's what we saw. What do you mean by a reverse repo? Now, a repo is different from a reverse repo. What is a reverse repo? That's also an agreement. Reverse repurchase agreement, which means you are doing the reverse of a repurchase. There is an agreement where one party agrees to purchase a security today with an agreement to sell it back in the future. Now, who gives this kind of a promise? Today, I agree to buy it from you, but in the future, I will sell it to you. Who gives this kind of an agreement? The lender of the money. So today, lender of the money will buy the security by giving the money. In the future, they will return the security and get the money. Okay. That shows you that a repo and a reverse repo are more like we are talking about the same transaction, but from two different perspectives. If I am the borrower, for me, it's a repo transaction. It's a repurchase transaction. Why? I am agreeing to buy it back. But for you, my lender, it's a reverse repo. Why? You are giving me the money. You're buying today, selling in the future. I am selling today, buying in the future. Okay. So one of you will take the reverse repo position. We are talking about the same transaction, but from two different perspectives. Okay. Now, think about this scenario. I hope you would have handled FD backed loans, fixed deposit backed loans. What happens there? You would have a fixed deposit at a bank. You tell the bank, look here, hold the fixed deposit as my collateral, give me a loan, and I will repay the loan. If I'm unable to repay the loan, you can use my FD and settle the loan. Okay, that's what happens in a FD backed loan. Okay. So does the bank give 100% of the FD amount as the loan? Let's say you have a loan. Let's say you have a loan FD of 1 million. You want a loan of 1 million as well. How much will the bank give? Usually bank says, look here, even though your FD is 1 million, I can't give you 100% of that amount. Why? If you default, I need to have interest, I need to have legal charges and so forth. Therefore, I will give you a percentage of the FD. I will give you 85% of the FD. I will give you 90% of the FD as the loan. There is always a cutoff. There is always a threshold. Why? In case there is any fluctuations, the lender is protected from that. Okay. Now here also it's something like that now. I give you a security and ask for money. Will you give me the exact worth of that security? You will give me a lesser amount. Why? Because let's say you give 100% and on the day I default, you go to the market and you can't sell it at that price, you will end up at a loss. So you will give me the money at a percentage. You will say, okay, 90% of the security value I will give you as a repo or a repo loan. Okay. So here you call it in a repo transaction, you call that the haircut. What do you mean by haircut? There is a collateral that you give, right? From the collateral, only a certain percentage is given as money to the borrower, not the 100% of the security value. Okay. Another point for you to note. Yes, there is a treasury bill which is a collateral. Let's say the repo was a 1 week repo. But the collateral given is a 1 year treasury bill. Good, the government issued treasury bill, all the characteristics are there. But let's say within that 1 week, that person has defaulted and now you need your money back. When you're trying to quickly sell the treasury bill in the market, can you sell it at the maturity value? No, you have to sell at a lesser value. So, depending on the market situation, you will get a particular amount. You have to take that amount and now settle the money that you have given as a loan. Okay. So, if there is a haircut percentage, not a 100% value, not the 100% value of the collateral is given as a loan. Okay. There is a haircut, I'm telling you. Then, will the haircut be applied on the face value of the treasury bill or the market value of the treasury bill? It has to be applied on the market value of the treasury bill. Why? because you might not get the face value today or tomorrow immediately. It depends on the days left to maturity. But you can assess the market value of a treasury bill. That will tell you the current ongoing price at which you can sell. Okay. You know that is the amount that you will get. So it is a percentage of that particular market value that you will give as a loan to the borrower. Okay. The amount the investor lends is less than the market value of the securities given as collateral. The difference is called haircut. Okay. Technically, the term is called haircut. It is used to ensure that sufficient collateral is maintained, that even though there is a fall in the value of the security, still your interest is secured. Okay. Now, how do I calculate market value of a treasury bill? What is a market value of the treasury bill? Is it face value? No. It is the price at which it is getting issued. It's the price at which it is getting traded. How do I find price of a treasury bill? Go back. Price of a treasury bill is essentially market value of the treasury bill. I have given you 3 ways to calculate that. So using that, when you calculate and arrive at an answer, that will give you the price of the treasury bill. Using that price, let's say maturity is 10 million, but ongoing price of the treasury bill is 9.8 million. It is based on that 9.8 million that you will apply the haircut. Usual haircut is 10%, which means 10% of the market value is your buffer. You can give 90%. Okay. So if the haircut is 10%, 90% of the value can be given out as loan. Okay. Why do you have that 10% as a buffer for you, for interest, the time cost and everything? But let's now, how do they monitor this? This has to be done on a daily basis. Daily basis, they monitor and see whether the haircut is breached. Let's say haircut amount is maintained at 10. Now it's at 8%. What happens? The borrower has to replace with a new security. Why? Haircut percentage has been breached. All right. That's how they maintain and monitor this haircut percentage. Now, what is the benefit of giving repos or entering into repos? What is the benefit? The person who's borrowing money using a repo is able to get that money at a lowest cost and quickly without having to give any other security. Who are the parties who mostly enter into repos? Primary dealers. Okay, most of the time it's the primary dealers that enter into repo agreements. Let's say one of those borrowers have defaulted. What can the investor do? Investor can claim on that security, can sell that security and get their money back. So what are the ways in which the investor can earn returns or gains when it comes to repo? As showed, there are 2 ways. One is you get an additional amount on maturity. Okay, interest. This is an additional gain for you, or this is your main return for you from repo. How do you express this rate? It's called repo rate. It's now, remember, repo doesn't follow a discount financing, a discount pricing method. Okay, that follows a direct add-on method. So let's say the rate is 6% for repo, principal into 6% into the time. Okay, so that interest rate is one of the main returns to the investor. There is another way that the investor can earn his money. What is the other way? Now, if I am the borrower, I give you a treasury bill and get your money. You, lender, is aware about the market and you know this treasury bill value is going to decline further. What you could do is you could immediately sell that security. For that current ongoing price. Wait until the repo is close to its maturity and buy back another instrument. Buy back another treasury bill at a much lesser price. Why? He predicted it correct that prices are decreasing. So now he's able to buy the treasury bill at a lesser price. From that, the investor can get a gain. But remember, the second method is one of the most riskiest method. Why? You think that you predict it correct and you can buy it back at a lower price. But if in case the price increases, you might end up at a much bigger loss. Why? You have to compensate back or you have to return the security back to the borrower. Okay. The primary dealer, or why do we refer to primary dealers? It is most of the primary dealers who enter into these repos and reverse repos. Okay. For them, what is the benefit of a repo? It's one of the most quickest and easiest way to get their money. Okay. They don't have to spend any time, know any documentation. They just have to communicate about the issue, communicate about the reason for the issuance, and of course, they could capitalize from that opportunity. Types of repo. There are three types of repos: overnight, term repo, and open repo. What do you mean by overnight repo? It is one of the most shortest terms. Every day morning, it will mature. So today, let's say today morning, I invest 10 million. Tomorrow morning, it matures. Overnight, just one night, you invest the money. One of the very, very shortest term that you could park your money. How does it work? For an investor, for a borrower, how does it work? I give you my security just for one day, I borrow your money. Tomorrow morning, I need to return it to you and get my security back. This is for one of very urgent fund requirements. Yes, they do that. What can we comment about the interest rate? One of the lowest interest rate available. Why? It's overnight, just for one day that you borrow. Term repo. Term repo is repo which you enter into for a period more than one day. More than one day when you enter into a repo, you commonly call it term repo. It is settled on a specific date. Usually it can take up to 3 to 6 months. Okay. And it will carry a higher rate than the overnight repo. Why? Risk level is higher. Time is higher. Okay. Therefore, it will carry a higher interest rate than overnight repo. What do you mean by open repo? Open repo meaning you have no set maturity date. You renew it every day and you keep continuing that. For example, let's say I have excess cash. Okay, you need money. Today you come and ask me for money for one day. I will collect your security, give you that money, and tomorrow it matures. That is called overnight repo. Okay. After that, are we going to continue that? No. It is finished from that point. Open repo meaning first, both of us will enter into an agreement. That is called master repo agreement. There is an arrangement between both of us. Look here. Going forward, both of us will enter into repo here and then. No any maturity date. We continue to renew it overnight. After that, I will give you money. Okay, and I will take your security. Tomorrow it matures. But are you going to give me money now, today? No. Again, tomorrow we will renew it again. We will say, okay, let's extend it for 1 year, for 1 day. Like that every day, each day, the repo is continued without maturity. There is no particular day. You keep continuing it on an overnight basis. But let's say there is a point in which you have to terminate. Then, based on your understanding, you give due notice to the counterparty and terminate the repo arrangement. Okay. Here, on an overnight basis, you continue. But because there is a prior arrangement and this is an open repo, you might be able to get a better rate than an overnight repo. Okay. Calculations for repurchase agreement. Now, repo, we saw what kind of a pricing technique it uses. It uses add-on rates, very much similar to FD rates. So, calculations formulas are pretty much straightforward. But only thing that might be a little bit tricky for you is the haircut percentage and the amount invested. Consider a 90-day repo transaction with a repo rate of 4.75%. You can read it even as an interest rate. Okay. 182-day treasury bill with a rate of discount of 5% and a face value of 10 million is used as collateral. Assume that haircut is equal to 10%. Question 1. What is the amount of repo loan or what is the amount invested in the repo? What is the amount that you have given out? Does it mention anywhere? You know the rate, but you don't know how much you have given. Now, how can you calculate that? There is one way that you can calculate it. I told you, market value of the collateral, 100% of the market value is not given out or not invested through repo. There is a percentage of buffer that you keep, that it's called haircut. Here it's 10%. Let's say market value of the treasury bill is 5 million. You will only give 4.5 million for that repo transaction. Why? Security is only worth 5 million. 10% is kept as your buffer. So 4.5 million can be invested in this repo. Now the question is asking you what is the invested amount. So you can use that technique and calculate the invested amount. First, you need to know the market value of the security. What is the market value of the security? Market value of the security is the price of the treasury bill. So first, you need to find the price of this treasury bill. Now, just like I told before, whenever you get a calculation, jot down the details separately. Here, first, you enter the repo related information. 90 days repo transaction. Repo rate is 4.75. This is all we know about the repo. Rest of the information refer to the collateral. It's a 182-day bill discount rate is 5%, face value is 10 million, haircut is 10%. All these are collateral related information. So we are not going to get confused. First question is amount invested. For that, you need to know the market price of the collateral, apply the haircut. Yes, then you get the amount invested. Okay. How do you find the price of the collateral? You have the face value 10 million, discount rate is given. Then you find the, use the discount rate based formula and you can find the market value of that collateral. Okay. So here it's 5%. 5% meaning discount rate is 5% meaning it's annualized. Okay. So you have to reverse that annualization effect. How do you do that? 5% you have to first divide it by 360. You will get the per day discount rate. Then you multiply it by 182 days or days left to maturity. So you know for that time period, for that 182 days, what is the applicable discount rate? So you will multiply the per day discount rate into 180. It gives you 2.5% as the discount rate. Then you multiply this 2.5% into face value. What do you get? You get the discount amount for that period, 250,000. 10 million minus 250,000 gets you the market value as 9.75 million. So question one part is done. Is this the answer? No. Now using this, we need to find amount invested in the repo. So market price is 9.75 million. Apply the haircut of 10%, which means 10% of this value is not given out, is your buffer. So 90% of the market price is the invested amount. Okay. What is the amount of the repo loan repayment in the transaction, which means on maturity, how much are you going to repay? Now, this is the amount from a borrower point of view. If on a borrower point of view, I borrowed money, I gave you the collateral, borrowed money. So on repayment, how much am I going to give you? What is the amount or the borrowed amount? Repo loan amount is 8.775 million. Now I need to calculate the interest on this. How do I calculate the interest on this? Principal into repo rate, which is 4.75%, into repo tenor of 90 days divided by 365 days. That will give you the interest amount. When you add those, you will arrive at the amount of repo repayment. With the interest, you will pay back 8.8 million to your lender. Okay. So 4.75 into the term of the repo, which is 90 days, divided by 365. Remember that. Your usual interest calculation. Your usual interest calculation basis is 365-day day count. Okay. So based on that, you will calculate your repo loan repayment amount on maturity. Next, we are going to talk about certificates of deposit. Now, certificate of deposit is one of the, what do I say, not very well known even when it comes to Sri Lanka, but it's something that you could relate to, has a very close features with fixed deposit. But one salient or distinctive feature here is the certificate that you get is a bearer certificate. Certificate of deposit meaning you have a deposit at a bank for a fixed time period, just like a FD. Okay. At the end of it, you will get a particular interest as a percentage. You will receive a certificate as a proof of your deposit. That certificate can be transferable. Is a bearer document. If I have a certificate of deposit, I just have to give you that certificate and you will be entitled to show that certificate and get the money. Okay, that's what you call a certificate of deposit. These are usually issued by commercial banks and these are tradable, transferable and negotiable. Okay, just like a fixed deposit, they have a maturity date, they have a fixed interest rate, they have a fixed period on maturity, and you can't draw the money before that. You can't have premature withdrawal. If you are going to have premature withdrawal, just like a fixed deposit, there is a penalty that you need to pay. But the certificate of deposit has some different features than other instruments. Main salient point is it is tradable. Now I go deposit 10,000 in a bank, let's say, and get a certificate of deposit. This 10,000 is tradable between parties. I can go to a secondary market and sell this. I don't have to wait until the FD maturing. As I stated before, just like a fixed deposit, the tenor is fixed, the deposit is fixed. I can't withdraw prematurely. If I have to do that, I have a penalty to pay. But here I have the option to go to a secondary market and trade it and get my money back. Okay, so tradable nature is an important feature when it comes to certificate of deposit. Other point is interest rate is lower than a typical FD rate. Yes, though both of them have the same features, FD interest rate is much higher than certificate of deposit interest rate. Why do you think? Because FD, both of them, a fixed time period, you can't withdraw prematurely. If you are withdrawing, you have to pay a penalty. But FD has no other tradable feature. Certificate of deposit, you can go to a secondary market and trade it and get out. Okay, so there is a tradable benefit given to certificate of deposit holders. But FD holders don't have that. Therefore, FD holders demand a higher rate, whereas certificate of deposit will give a lower rate to you because of that transferable ability. Okay, as the certificate of deposit is made for fixed period, depositor can use the funds early by selling the certificate to a third party in the secondary market. They can realize it much quickly without having to wait until maturity. Now think from a point of view of a bank, of a issuer of certificate of deposit. Okay. For an issuer, certificate of deposit is a source of attracting low-cost funds, low-cost deposits. Why? For a FD, I have to give a higher interest rate. But for certificate of deposit, I can give a low interest rate. And I have the benefit where if there is any premature withdrawal, I can charge for penalty as well. Okay. Main distinctive benefit is certificate of deposit being low cost deposit. Okay, but another salient feature is even though it's low cost instrument or low premium instrument when it comes to when you compare with the FD, still it carries a higher interest premium when you compare to government securities. Why? Due to the higher risk and relatively low liquidity. We know T-bill market is a highly liquid market. You could quickly realize. But here, not so much. There should be someone willing to buy that certificate of deposit from you. Okay. If not, you are unable to realize that. Okay. So, in compared to a FD, it is a less cost product. But in compared to treasury bill, it's a high interest product. Okay. Then we move to calculations of certificate of deposit. Now, when you go for calculation of certificate of deposit, remember, most questioned is the yield, rate of return. Now, when you calculating rate of return, I have told you, return as a percentage is the income or the return that you get in amount divided by investment value. Okay, divide by what you invested. That's what we will apply all over here. Okay, for you to first you need to identify what is the return from the question. Then you need to identify what could be your investment amount. Depending on that, you have to calculate your yield. Okay, I want you to attempt these two questions on your own. Why? Because even though question number 1 is pretty much straightforward, question number 2 carries the scenario of a secondary market. A treasury bill, if you bought from, if a certificate of deposit, if you bought from a secondary market, okay. Small notice for all of you, August 15th is the closing date for your exam application. Please apply. It's I think you have exactly about just 1 week more. So on a timely basis, apply for your exams. I think this they're planning to have by November or October, somewhere close by then, and finish off. There are 2 sessions that they need to conduct. So on a timely basis, apply for that. Okay. So as I said before, question number 2 is a different question. Why? There we are talking about the tradable aspect of certificate of deposit. Yes, you deposit in a bank, you get the certificate, but you sell it in the secondary market. Somebody else has now bought it. For that new purchaser, for that new party who bought it, when they calculate their return, how would it be? Okay, so I want you to think from your end and attempt these 2 questions, and we will talk on the answers for these 2 questions, and we will be able to finish off this topic next week, and then start off with capital market. Okay, it's like the heart of your entire syllabus. Okay, so next week we should be able to finish off this and start off with the capital market topic. Okay, thank you so much for listening in. Again, this Sunday also we will have the weekly questions being sent around. If you have already shared the email address, you don't have to, but if you haven't, please share. Okay, thank you so much for listening in. Apply for the exams on time. Okay.